of critical care, and Dr. Atul Mishra. So we can start with Dr. Sarju's presentation. Dr. Sarju, please.
Yeah, I'll just share my slide. Just to everybody, actually, I have uploaded all the files, and we have extensively studied this topic and made some protocols, which I have already uploaded in the PDF format. So I'm thankful to Dr. Vishav, Dr. Wanda for giving me this opportunity to share this topic, which is a very burning topic at this point of time. We have been in lockdown for last 1.5 months. Time has come when we have to gradually start our work. And as far as COVID-19 is concerned, I think there is a lot of circulation in the social media by now. We know quite a lot about what is COVID-19.
तो थोड़ी ऊंची करो डॉक्टर सरजू, आवाज नहीं आ रही थोड़ी क्लियर.
एक मिनट.
डॉक्टर विश्व,
अब ठीक है आवाज? विश्व, हेलो,
ठीक है सर,
अब ठीक है आवाज?
अब ठीक है,
अब ठीक है.
I think everybody can hear, and the slides are clear on the screen.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So human race, as we all know, is in war with an invisible entity, which is significantly impacting our lives and affecting our practice as a health professionals. COVID-19 is fueling with still transmission of, which is the biggest worry for us as a surgeons. As a surgeons, we need to be proactive rather than reactive. So how do we plan in a way that we can resume our work and elective surgeries? Burn if you must, but rise from the dust. This has been basic protocol of almost all surgeons. And we all know that coronavirus is no match with the plain old soap. What basically happens is the soap has a hydrophilic and a hydrophobic tail. It doesn't attach to water. It allows this soap to penetrate into the virus and ultimately becomes a micelle. It gets warm.
सरजू, आपकी आवाज मुझे इतनी क्लियर नहीं आ रही, शायद सबको नहीं आ रही होगी. थोड़ा पास आके ऊंचा बोलिए प्लीज.
हेलो, आप सुन रही हैं?
There is a background noise from somebody. Please unmute everybody else.
on the left side of your screen there is a mute. Please mute all of us. Let us all mute and only listen to Sarju.
I request everyone to mute their mics.
ਸਾਡੇ ਕਲਾਸ ਦਾ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਕਰ
ਚਾਕੂ ਚੁਰੀ ਵਾਲੇ
ਕੋਵਿਡ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਹੋਊਗੀ.
ਮਾਈਕ ਘੱਟ ਹੀ ਪਕੜਦੇ ਨੇ. ਇਹ ਸੀਜ਼ਰ ਤੇ ਨਾਈਫ ਵਾਲੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਮਾਈਕ ਘੱਟ ਪਕੜਦੇ ਨੇ.
Sir, Dr. Sarju, you are unmuting everybody. Please mute everybody.
I have muted everybody actually. Okay. So there are 4 do's which are very important for the surgeons. We have to protect our face appropriately and do not allow any surgical fume or smoke to go into our lungs. Hand hygiene is the most important, which is of course practiced from ages by us, and treat every patient possibly as a COVID positive patient. Our priority is to save the patient's life at any cost and provide a timely and appropriate surgical treatment. That's the basic part of our Hippocratic Oath. And at the same time, we have to save and protect ourselves and our co-health workers. Why, as a surgeons, we do not want to operate at this point of time is because of the lessons learned from, which has caused a fear in our mind. Almost to the tune of 3,300 health workers in China, they were affected with the coronavirus. And Dr. Leaving, who was the whistleblower for the disease, also died. In Italy, more than 4,800 people who health workers, they have been infected. And in Italy, it was learned that the death rate was about 10 times higher in age group of 60 and above. Recently, yesterday itself, there was a data from Bombay wherein 370 health workers have been affected. The biggest affliction has been to the Wockhardt Hospital. So all of us, we know that knowledge is power and communities are strength. But positive attitude at this point of time is the most important thing which is going to make us pull through this crisis period. So surgical care wherein is starting right from the small consultation chambers to almost to the tune of medical colleges wherein young surgeons, PGs, registrars and physicians are involved. And there are designated hospitals for COVID-19 treatment wherein we have to practice this surgical. So what is self-protection is the most important thing. As far as possible, our first consultation should possibly be by a telemedicine or a video consultation. And the second consultation should be by a prior appointment as far as possible. We have to practice certain things when we are leaving from home to the hospital. We should use simple clothes, wear shoes, avoid any kind of suit, tie, watch at this point of time. And as soon as we reach the hospital, we should change into our scrub dress and wear appropriate mask and protective gear depending on the area which we are taking care of. The gloves should be worn by us, which prevents touching and preventing our face being touched because we have the gloves all the time. Frequent hand wash and with the use of sanitizer. Avoid touching mobile. Hello? Wear gloves, prevent touching fomites and on our own face. Avoid touching mobile and sanitize mobile as SOS. While leaving the hospital, we should change our clothes and send the scrub for wash and iron. When we reach home, we should wash our hand, change the dress immediately and wash our keys, mobile. And those who are above the age of 60, they should probably have a supportive role rather than avoiding any active role. Actually, in fact, in our hospital, we among ourselves, we decided that we'll be carrying one scrub at home. So when we leave the hospital, we change to the new scrubs. And when we reach home, we change those scrubs and send them for the wash. And next day morning, when we are going back to the hospital, we go in the hospital scrubs itself. And when we reach hospital, we change these scrubs. We as a surgeons are at a crossroads because most of the associations have already formed their guidelines and they are more vigilant. So what we decided that we visited several sites, WHO, CDC and ICMR, so that we can form our own protocols and carry them. The issues highlighted in this review should not be taken as an official guideline and mandates or standard operating procedures, many of which are likely to change over a period of time as we are evolving through this process. There can be unprecedented situations where everything we are doing is in an experiment in a real time. So what do we do? And when there are no set guidelines which can tell us that these are we should go by this way, we have to form our own guidelines. We are in the process of learning, unlearning and relearning, and ultimately as the time evolves, we will be able to form certain set guidelines so that we can do our procedures. What we did is that the protocol and structure was made by the frequent communication with the stakeholders. There were teams, we involved ourselves with the anesthesia team, intensive care units, attendings, nurses, respiratory therapists, operating room nursing staff, environmental services, security and members. We all discussed together to form the protocols, which I will be as a surgeons, we are involved at various roles, right? Starting from the OPD consultation, emergency areas, OPD procedures, emergency surgery, and teaching also. And as far as elective surgeries are concerned, at this point of time, we are not doing any elective surgeries. We all have to know that there are aerosol generating procedures, adequate knowledge and education of about disease transmission and use of protective gears and infection control protocols are essential to prevent spread of infection among healthcare workers. We have to judiciously use the PPE kits because there is a scarcity of PPE kits. So there are three kinds of kits which are available. Is a basic kit, and then there is a medium kit, then there is an advanced kit, that is PP1, PP2 and PP3. So there are selected areas like PP1 is to be used by all housekeeping staff, canteen workers, administrative staff, pharmacy staff and all visitors. A medium kit is to be used by all OPD staff, pathology staff, radiology staff, ambulance, mortuary staff, OT staff and patient attendants. And PP3 is to be used only by those who are directly involved with patients who are COVID positive. We formed our own PP guidelines to use these kits. So what we have done is that in outpatient department, leaving aside pulmonary medicine, all the consultants, they wear gown and they wear a face shield and a N95 mask over which they wear a 2-layer mask. In cardiothoracic and general OT surgeons, assistant surgeons and scrub nurses, they should wear level 2 kit with the N95 mask and a single layer mask plus a double layer gloves. Circulating nurse wears a green gown and a plastic apron. Anesthetists, they have to wear PP2 and PP3 kits because they are directly involved in the intubation process. Attendants who shifting the patient, they wear a green gown, in-house N95 mask and a single layer mask with shoe cover. Instruments are immediately cleaned after the completion of the procedure, and the nurses who are cleaning the instruments, they wear a green gown in-house and a 3-layer mask plus goggles and shoe covers. Pharmacy store will wear a N95 mask which is to be utilized for 1 month. Pharmacy store will take a signature from all those whom they are issuing all this. We try as far as possible to minimize the staff. In general OT, 5 to 7 staffs. In cardiothoracic OT, 3 to 4 staffs per OT. In a cath lab, 5 to 7 staffs. In an endoscopic room, 3 to 4 staffs. So this is a protocol which has been formed. I have already uploaded this file. And we are formed regarding the usage of N95 masks. We have a protocol from the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, wherein we issue 4 masks to each staff. In the surgical OT, we have designed areas like in ICU 2 and in the surgical OT, we are issue them 4 masks, which are in the envelopes. So like they use first mask on day 1, and then that mask is kept back in the cover, and it is used on the 5th day again. So this way we can use 4 masks for almost 1 month. During COVID-19 period, we have divided the surgery as categorized into emergency surgery, which is less than 1 hour, urgent surgery within 24 hours, urgent elective surgery 2 weeks, elective essential surgery 1 to 3 months, and elective surgery which is discretionary for 4 months. Emergency surgeries are the procedure like life-threatening emergencies where there is a hemorrhagic shock is involved, trauma level 1, acute vascular injury occlusion, aortic dissection, emergency C-section, acute compartment syndrome, necrotizing fasciitis, peritonitis, bowel section, and urgent, which is less than 24 hours, like appendicitis, cholecystitis, septic arthritis, open fractures, bleeding pelvic fractures, surgical infections. And elective surgeries are those wherein patients can wait for more than 2 weeks. Cardiothoracic surgeries, cardiovascular procedures, cerebral aneurysms, vascular access devices, skin grafts, flaps, wound closures, skewed C-section, closed fractures, spinal fractures. And 1 to 3 months like cancer surgeries, biopsies, subacute cardiac valve procedures, hernia repair, hysterectomy, and reconstructive surgeries. And the surgeries wherein we can wait for more than 3 months are most of them are their cosmetic surgeries, bariatric surgeries, joint replacement, sports surgery, vasectomy and tubal ligation, and infertility procedures. And depending upon the risk of aerosolization, we have divided them into high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. There has been a lot of doubt about the surgical technique to reduce exposure of surgical procedure. So people are advocating that the laparoscopic surgery should be avoided as far as possible. For cancer patients who have it to delay the surgery, alternative treatment approaches to delay the surgery can be considered, such as neoadjuvant chemotherapy or for appendicitis, cholestasis, if possible, conservative management should be followed, and if required, then open surgery is preferred. Regarding the filtration during laparoscopic, there are set guidelines by SAGES, that is safe evacuation of carbon dioxide from the port attached to the filtration device before closure, require removal, specimen extraction, and then followed by conversion to open surgery. So once placed, the ports should not be vented if possible. During desufflation, all escaping carbon dioxide gas, smoke should be captured within an ultrafiltration system. Be sure to close the valve on working port that is being used for insufflation before the flow of carbon dioxide on the insufflator is turned off. Even if there is an inline filter in the tubing, without taking these precautions, contamination of intra-abdominal carbon dioxide can be pushed into the insufflator when the intra-abdominal pressure is higher than the pressure within the insufflator. Specimens should be removed once all the carbon dioxide and smoke has been evacuated. Surgical drains, as far as possible, should be avoided, and the suture closure devices that allow leakage of insufflation should be avoided. The fascia should be closed after desufflation. Now I will start from when we start our OPD, we have a trial area or a fever clinic in the screening respiratory system in surgical patients. The patients which are suspected or confirmed COVID-19 should be assigned a private room wherein the room is closed and should be provided a surgical mask or a face mask without exhalation valve. In our hospital, we have two separate entrances. One is for the patients and one is for the staff. When the staff enters the hospital, entry, we check the temperature of all the staff members. In case they have fever, we tell them to avoid coming to the hospital. At exchange triage, we have a evaluation criteria depending upon the age, symptoms of fever, cough, cold, breathlessness, and diarrhea, comorbidities like diabetes mellitus, hypertension, heart disease, history of COVID-19 in that area, of contact with the COVID-19 patient. Segregate them into low risk, moderate risk, high risk depending on the criteria as mentioned.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Sarju. There's a background noise from somewhere. Please mute everybody.
So whenever patient is reaching, we have a graph. We have the map of Punjab, wherein we have designed the areas which are red zone areas. So if the patient is coming from the areas which are red zone, we take a special care of them. They are straightaway into a high risk zone. Our screening protocol for the patients. The criteria for the admission in this ward is that ward is designated as a surgical screening area for moderate or low risk patients. And we have infection control practices that all health workers should wear proper PPE depending on the area which they are serving. Nurses, doctors, they wear green gown, in-house wrap around, face shield, goggles, gloves, and shoe cover. And attendants and housekeeping, they wear green gown, in-house wrap around, face shield, goggles, gloves, and shoe cover. Donning and doffing areas specifically assigned, and these areas are cleaned by sodium hypochlorite, which is provided in that area. Cleaning of patient's room after discharge or patient transfer should be done as follows. The wall, floor, and the washroom are cleaned with 1% hypochlorite solution. Washroom to be cleaned with hypochlorite 1% solution. Cleaning nursing station and handles and devices should be done at the interval of 3 to 4 hours with 1% hypochlorite solution. Cleaning room should be done as per routine protocol. Food services in these areas are diet assessment should be done telephonically. Separate trolleys to be used. Food to be dispatched individually to all the patients. To minimize the relatives' movement, they should get their food inside the patient room only. Staff dispatching food shall wear 3-layer mask, cap, and gloves. These are protocols which have been designed by us. And at this point of time, it is very important to change our surgical consent. We have to have a specific surgical consent for COVID-19 patients, wherein we designate that these patients are willing for the treatment, investigation, and surgery. And we take this thing in consent form itself, that the number of attendants allowed with the patients are minimal. We follow what is called as a buddy system for donning and doffing, wherein there is one attendant who takes care of things with how we are wearing gloves. This is the protocol which is being followed by all of us. So you can take a screenshot of this. This is a protocol which is followed. This is a sequence which is followed for both donning and doffing. Regarding operation theater, we have to check whether your OR meets these NABH guidelines. The air changes per cycle should be 25. Air velocity should be 25 to 35. Positive pressure of 2.5 Pascal. Air handling and filtration, that is AHU, should have a HEPA filter. And regarding temperature, which is very important, generally we keep the temperature 21 degree plus minus 3 degree because we are in the cardiac OT area. And in case the temperature is 20 degree, we keep the humidity of 60%. So what we do is that in cardiac OTs, we generally start the AC plant at 5 o'clock in the morning because operating time is at 7 o'clock. And at 6:30, we switch off the AC when the patient is entering into the operation room. And after intubation and complete draping, then we start the AC again. What can we do in the OT? This is an inter-association surgical practice recommendations in COVID-19 time. Negative pressure room is desirable wherever possible. Minimal number of personals to be inside the operating room. Limit the size of surgical team as far as possible. Avoid operating room personals stepping out of the OT during the procedure. Minimum 1 hour time gap should be there between the two procedures. We have to minimize the duration of surgery. So during this time, there is no surgical or nursing training during this period. Avoid multiple and complex surgeries. Reusable accessories are to be cleaned and disinfected. 1% sodium hypochlorite solution is used. As far as possible, all the equipments, they should be covered with a plastic because it is easy to clean the plastic over the surface. And as far as anesthesia is concerned, we have a set anesthesia protocol. We intubate the patients when they're already having the mask on. It is very easy to ventilate the patient through the mask. As far as possible, the extubation should be done in the OT for all these short procedures, and the routine cleaning of all the OT equipment should be done. Surface for all medical devices is cleaned with quaternary ammonium compounds. Post-surgical care, wherever there are low risk or in the patient areas where there are low risk patients, there we use level 1 PP. In high risk areas, we use level 2 and level 3 PPs. And we have to take a special care for deep vein thrombosis because these COVID-19 patients are at a high risk of deep vein thrombosis. At this point of time, we are not taking any patients for surgery who are COVID-19 positive. But in case in future, we have to take a patient who is COVID-19 positive, then this is a protocol which is to be followed. And if we are dealing with COVID-19 patients, we'll have to use powered air purifier respiratory system. Now, patients who have recovered from COVID-19, what to do about the surgery in patients who have recovered from COVID-19 patients? The long-term effect of COVID-19 disease are not yet known. We have to wait and watch policy for some time. If surgery is needed, then it has to be done under proper discussion with the team. If a patient post-operative period, patient turns out to be positive, then what is to be done? If there has to be a hospital COVID committee meeting, detailed interview with all those who are involved in the patient care right from the emergency to the ward, OT and ICU, appropriate PPE use and duration, find the act of whether there was any fault or lacunae. And if we find that prevention measures were taken, but there was a lacunae by healthcare workers, they have to be home quarantined for 2 weeks and started on HCQ prophylaxis. Daily twice temperature has to be checked. In COVID positive test is to be done 4 days, and then we have to sanitize the area which is being infected. And second condition is wherein all preventive cares have been taken and there was no lacunae found, then the healthcare worker can work twice daily temperature is checked and monitored for 4 weeks. A brief about the HQ prophylaxis by ICMR. All of us we know by now that asymptomatic healthcare workers involved in the care of suspected or confirmed COVID-19 cases, asymptomatic household contacts of laboratory confirmed cases. In category 1, we have to give 400 mg twice a day on day 1, followed by 400 mg once weekly for next 7 weeks. In second category, we have to give 400 mg twice a day for 1 day, followed by 400 mg once a week for next 3 weeks. Now, testing for COVID-19 has become compulsory for any patients who is being taken up for surgery. A brief about the coronavirus testing. We have to understand that RT-PCR can be falsely negative in up to 30% of the patients. This is a protocol which is formed by us. This is a logarithm chart which we have prepared. So you can take a screenshot, and anyway, I have shared this slide also. I will share my video in the last. So we have been advocating and telling people that how they have to improve their immunity. So at this point of time, it is very important for us as a health workers that we have to keep our immunity high. And so what we have to do is that should do a physical activity in the form of either exercise, yoga, pranayama, or meditation. Our eating habits, they have to be right. We have to have a good sleep. Vitamin C in a dosage of 250 to 100 milligram. Vitamin D, 1000 to 4000 international units, and zinc 40 milligram per day. Keep our mind active. Read books and write a book. Distance socializing by phone or Skype. Avoid smoking, alcohol, and addictive substances. Refreshing your knowledge. Maybe you write or publish an article, edit your surgical videos, take online class, do a webinar on your own, write blogs on your YouTube channel, listen to motivational talks, spiritual talks. And in the midst, we all as a young surgeons, we have to understand that in the midst of every crisis lies a great opportunity. Teaching during pandemic has to be in the form of virtual teaching platforms, online assessment, thesis work, webinars, and online prepaid courses. This is a brief video that how we are managing our surgical setup.
The patient is being wheeled in, all the preparations are being made, the trolley is prepared when there is nobody inside except for the paramedics and the main OT staff. It is covered with a cloth, and the OT staff moves out, and then the patient is being wheeled in by the paramedical staff. They are fully dressed in PPE, and then the ECG electrodes are being placed, and the anesthetist enters inside, and then he places the radial artery and the peripheral cannula for the induction. After induction, the patient is being ventilated with the mask on. It's very easy to ventilate through the mask. This is to prevent aerosol dissemination. After the intubation, all the lines are being put and the preparations are ready for the surgery. All the monitors are covered with the plastic. Filter is attached at both the inspiratory and the mask at the exit point to prevent dissemination. The OT staff and the surgeon, they dress up in PPE too, and that's how the procedure is being done during COVID-19 crisis.
Now to briefly tell you, how do we prepare for a new life after coronavirus lockdown ends? We have to be optimistic. Human race have won all the previous pandemics. Wear simple cloth. Masking will become a new fashion. Avoid public transport. Lockdown may be repeated if there is a recurrent outbreak. Manage stress and finances. Hygiene rules have to be followed. And distance socializing is important. Telemedicine will become very important at this point of time. How do we go for elective surgeries? To be considered carefully after the lockdown period is over. Local hospitals, they have to have a COVID committee. We have to know our community and testing availability. We have to be prepared as far as health workers, healthcare facility, OT preparedness, and supply chain. We have to think of the patient issues like communication, consent issues, prioritization, and we have to deliver healthcare at all levels. For preparing this document, we took extensive care from journals from Singapore and Hong Kong, wherein the health workers inflicted with the COVID-19 were the least affected. We have to understand that this is going to be a marathon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarju. I think before we start some discussion, I would like our expert, Dr. Varinder, to give some, insight about what he thinks and how to move about. And Dr. Varinder, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bishop. I think Sarju has covered the whole topic very well. And the only thing I would like to add here is that I don't know about Punjab really, but if you have COVID patients coming to your hospital, then you have to have a separate facility or a separate ward for these COVID patients and a separate OT facility also for these COVID patients, because then the preparation levels are different for COVID and non-COVID. Then the other issue which we have faced at AIIMS is actually not COVID or non-COVID patients. The actual issue comes in when you have a patient who requires emergency surgery, like in general surgery, like perforation peritonitis or obstruction, or patient coming with blunt trauma abdomen. So in these patients, if you have a COVID suspect, that means he's coming from a hot area, or in these surgical patients, you will have some chest symptoms, chest signs also, and history of fever is also there. Maybe some history of contact is also there, where you are not sure about the COVID status of the patient. But then patients require emergency surgery, life-threatening emergency surgery within 2 to 6 hours of admission. So for such patients at AIIMS, what we have done is that we have designated separate area, which is called as a COVID suspect area, because the testing all over India now in AIIMS also, previously we were getting results in 6 to 12 hours, but now since the last 2-3 days we are getting results in 24 to 36 hours. So this group of patient becomes very important for all surgical colleagues, because then the question comes that what is the level of precaution in these patients which have to be taken. So day before yesterday only I reviewed the literature extensively, and what I find here is, in even the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare guidelines say that if you have a COVID or a COVID suspect, then you have to have the full PPE. Full PPE actually needs to be clarified. I think Sarju dealt with that a little bit, but needs to be clarified more for the general practitioners, that full PPE means for COVID and COVID suspect I'm talking. It means a coverall, a level 3 coverall, plus a sterile surgical gown over that, plus the shoe covers, plus the face shield, plus your mask, plus your N95, or a better is a PAPR mask if you're going in for a prolonged surgery, and your hood and everything, that all becomes very important. But then that COVID suspect is something which one has to keep in mind when we open up also in the coming days. I don't know whether it will be 2 weeks or 4 weeks from now, but someday it will open up. So as we open up, then the COVID suspects, this category also becomes very important. For the COVID negative, what we have decided at AIIMS is that you don't require a full PPE. As for the COVID positive patient, full PPE means the coverall basically. What you call as a Tyvek suit or whatever you want to call it, it's a coverall basically, which covers from head to toe. You don't require that for a COVID negative patient, but then all surgeons, because majority of the procedures are aerosol generating, even the use of a monopolar diathermy is COVID generating. Even your anesthetists, when they're intubating or when they're suctioning, all the things are going into the OR. There also the protocol is that healthcare workers, all the healthcare except the anesthetist, all the other healthcare workers wait outside the OR for at least 5 to 10 minutes before they come in, so that those aerosols settle, and then the surgical colleagues are at lesser risk. So there what we have decided is that we will wear gowns, surgical gowns. Face shield I think is a must, because that is something which gives you a lot of protection. And then your shoe covers, and then your double gloves and N95 mask, maybe under which you can have a surgical mask, 3-ply mask, or over it you can have a 3-ply mask. That depends upon the hospital policy altogether. And then, as he has very nicely pointed out, actually, that all hospitals have to have their own protocols. They have to see their own PPE availability, and then the use of that PPE availability, because basically the opening up of surgical services will depend upon the availability of these PPE services. I think rest he has covered, I think, very well.
Thank you, Varinder. And first, thank you for joining. And now we are able to see you.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. And now, Doctor, I think this is
I
open for questioning.
Bishop, one more minute. I think I have I shared the CELSI and the inter-association guidelines which we had made between CELSI, IAGS, and AMASI of the surgeons associations. So I've shared those on the PDF with everyone in this group, whosoever is there in this group. They can go through that also.
So basically, see, I'm a non-surgeon and a physician. So my question is,
sorry, you're muted, Bishop.
There is a fear going among surgeons, and residents, and everywhere. I think everywhere. So what you are saying is judicious use and indicated use of PP. One thing is, I'm very clear that it depends upon which background the patient is coming, whether it is coming from containment or a red zone. So if the fear comes that the patient can come maybe an asymptomatic, it comes from the orange zone, then it will be impossible to perform a surgery without PP, and which is not very practical and cost effective. So we are little worried about this scenario, which you are saying this will happen. So what are your points, on this?
See, the first thing I would like to say here is that the point of first contact in the OPD or in the emergency, at present, all the patients are coming to us through the emergency, and maybe for the next month or so, I think we are going to see that situation. So the point of first contact, you have to be very careful, because there you don't know about the history of the patient. Even if the screening team has screened the patient, still as a surgeon, you have to be careful. We have had instances at AIIMS also, wherein the patient came in through the screening team, but still turned out to be COVID positive later on. So at the first instance, instruct your residents, instruct the person who is seeing the patient in first instance to take proper precautions while examining these patients. First, take a history. Proper history of contact, a proper history of fever, a proper history of exposure is all that is very important. And then from there on, then you can take a decision whether you suspect him to be positive or whether you think he is negative. So your decisions will be based on that initial contact with the patient. Teleconsultation, yes, can be a good model for a elective problem.
Thank you. Dr. Jaspal and I think Dr. Mishra has joined, and there is a question from Dr. Harpal. Dr. Harpal, can you question to Dr. Jaspal? The questions are in the family.
Thank you.
So my actually question is directed at Dr. Sarju. He referred to there is smoke generated and you have a face shield and a mask. Sir, most of the deaths that have occurred worldwide, apart from anesthetist or critical care people, have been orthopedic surgeons and cardiac surgeons. The reason being, apart from smoke that is generated by cautery, we both are one branches which use drill a lot. You use it to cut the sternum and we use it for bone drilling. And now it is an established fact that the smoke generated and the aerosol generated while you work on the bone may be COVID positive. They have not been able to prove that it does not have COVID. In that light, what do you suggest that we should wear to cover our face? Because simple face shield that we are using, like motorcycle riders use, does not stop smoke. So should we be using a full mask like 3M has for industrial use, where you seal it from chin to forehead?
See, Harpal, actually, this is very important. All the drilling procedures, they have a lot of aerosol generation. Now, as far as wearing that industrial mask, to be honest, it's really very cumbersome. One day in the OT, I was wearing a full mask and shield, which was covering my face. And I can tell you, within 3 minutes, I was almost like feeling suffocated. So what we found is that in case you have a proper N95 mask, which is covering your face totally, and over that, if you have a 3-layer mask, which will give you a sufficient protection, because you have to operate also. In case you're covering your face totally with the mask which you are telling, the operating becomes really very difficult. This may be possible for short procedures which are lasting less than half an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, see, we have had experience of operating 3 patients with all the PPE, and I can tell you it is really difficult after 15-20 minutes, as somebody was saying on this group also. After 15-20 minutes, your face shield gets fogged. You really can't see anything, and it's really hell of a job to operate in such a condition. We have operated on 3 patients in the last 2 weeks with full PPE, and it is really hell of a job to operate. And at the end of it, we were just operating by guess that okay, these are the incisions, although these were cases of perforation, peritonitis, DU, perf and all, but still they are also, by the time we were doing abdominal closure, it was just by guesswork that we were taking those bites, because nothing was visible after 1.5-2 hours of surgery. So
I think as the pandemic evolves, we will have more innovations.
Yeah.
As because the first case I did on a cardiogenic shock patient who returned from France, and he was almost and a fever and in cardiogenic shock. And believe me, after 10-15 minutes, I was wearing my full PPE, and I have to call my colleague to tell me, where to place that stent, and somebody has to inflate it.
Yeah,
because it was so stressful in the beginning. So I think we all understand and think that's why we are discussing. Some innovations will come and we will be able to be better for that.
What I have seen is,
yes, Jaspal.
What I have seen is that even if you wear simple N95, and if you have a proper N95 made by 3M, you get tired within 2 hours. I've seen somebody who uses that for 2 hours and then sleeps for 2 hours. So large procedures, one of the points that Dr. Sarju raised was we have to be quick about surgery, keep procedures short. And that point is very valid. If you are taking too much time during the surgery or it's a complex procedure, one should consider postponing more than doing it, or 2 people should be operating alternatively. And this kind of thing needs to evolve for teamwork to go on. That if you are going to do 4-hour procedure, 2 hours and 2 hours, 2 people should be taking up the same operation, because using PPE or even a simple N95 mask, the work of breathing increases so much because of the filtration process. You are going to have tough time going on for a long duration.
There is one question from actually Dr. Stinder. She is doing regularly gynae procedures, cesarean and deliveries in the medical college Patiala, and facing all sorts of stresses, COVID patients and everything. We would like that, what is her viewpoints on this, because she is handling those cases every day. Dr. Please.
Yes. I totally agree with the house that there is a lot of difference between the theoretical and practical guidelines. It's very difficult to use the face shield while operating the patient. So I totally agree that the most dangerous thing we are dealing these days is the managing the patient in the suspect. Fortunately, we did not have any patient of COVID positive in our obstetrical emergency till now in my setup in our hospital of obstetricals. But as the more cases are coming from the red zone containment area, and the definition of the clinical symptomatology in suspect cases is also changing. So the danger point lies in how to manage the suspect cases. But I fully agree with the house that it is very difficult to wear a face shield while operating, and almost after half an hour, it's so difficult for visualization that a good quality N95 mask and your eye cover, which you are routinely using, has to be of good quality to avoid being infected.
Thank you, Sindhu. Dr. Bhagwant actually is very actively participating in from the government side, from private side, and he's a surgeon. And I would like Dr. Bhagwan to give his viewpoint, because he is from the practice and he knows what are the shortcomings and what are the strengths, how to move about these patients in the general surgery. Dr. Bhagwan.
The basic thing about wearing the N95 mask is that you rebreathe the carbon dioxide. So in the lengthy procedures, the concentration of the surgeon goes down because of the increased CO2, which goes up to the in the range of 40, which is normally at the PCO2 is 32. So that is a matter of concern. If you wear two masks, then it further deteriorates the situation. So you have to have the procedures which are not very lengthy. Try to finish the procedures as early as you can. Second thing is how much the general hospitals which are run by couples or run by the single doctors are capable of handling the COVID patients. My concern is about the first is about the economic criteria about these things. It is not viable for the general hospitals. You can say the secondary level hospitals to deal with these patients because of the economic constraints. Every patient is not able. First thing is that how much we will be able to get the COVID test done. It is not a priority to get the test done for the patient only by the suspicion or by for the procedure. Till date, we are lagging behind for testing these things, and we have to look into the matter that how long it will take that we will have the test available for each and every nursing home to be done. So it is a matter of concern. Second thing is how much prevalence of this disease is in the community. If you are dealing with the patients who are coming from the red zones or from the red zone, it is not if the district is having more than patients, it is labeled as red zone. There are pockets in the district which are basically red zones. So you have to be more suspicious about the patients who are coming from those areas. And taking precautions on each and every patient with the PP, full PP and the testing is not possible as it is of today. So in the coming months, we have to see how the things will evolve and how the practice will be run. My concern is that government should come with something that like NHS, as they have decided to postpone the surgeries which are not important, which are not emergency surgeries, cancer surgeries, they have postponed all other routine surgeries in general practice also. That type of thing should be done in India also, where we are doing non-significant and non-problematic hernias, like which hysterectomies which can be postponed or which can be delayed with the hormonal treatment or other things, and the other procedures which can be managed conservatively. So our approach will be changing in coming months from radical to conservative things. That's my assertion, and I fully agree with the house that we are in a difficult position. We have to evolve our practices about our dealing with the patients and our economic viabilities to deal with this difficult situation. Thank you very much.
Bhagwant, there was a point Dr. Vrinder has raised about the red zones and the containment zones. Yesterday, I was listening to Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, and as an expert, and I would say at a political viewpoint, it was very valid that if you have a 15 case, you are a red zone. But the point is that if we take a proper history and a digital mapping, that if the patient comes from that in the red zone, in the containment zone, then it becomes very high risk for the COVID. A person who is living 40 kilometers away from that district or a village, he is not a COVID suspect, because the whole village is not having, COVID positive. Then the district is red, but the village is like, evergreen. So the digital mapping and the history, as Dr. Vrinder was saying, is very, very important. When to suspect and when not to suspect. Because once you start suspecting, your cost becomes doubles. Almost. And it becomes, almost impossible to do simple surgery without PP in those very cases.
Yes,
Dr. Atul?
the difficulty with the PP is that everybody is not getting the right quality of PP kits. Number one.
Agreed,
Number
agreed.
two, that is the most important thing as of today.
Dr. Atul Mishra is here. Dr. Atul Mishra, Dr. Sandeep Sharma.
Yeah, Dr. Mishra, yeah.
Yeah, Atul, yes. What are you?
Actually, Dr. Sarju and other people, Dr. Bansal, have covered very nicely. A few things I would like to highlight. One, as a general surgeon, one should be aware that after lungs, the ileum is the second highest concentration of the virus. So if you are doing bowel surgery, especially small ileum, you are exposed to virus in a very high load. So one has to be very careful when you are doing bowel surgery, and you have to take all precaution. I'll tell you my own experience that we have tried to do cases with PPE recently. What happens after 25 to 30 minutes, you're going to collapse with level 3 PPE because so much sweating and other things, and you need a motorized ventilated PPE for that. The only problem will come when we have to operate a COVID positive patient with life-threatening emergency. The one thing which we tried recently, that we make a team and divide the surgery into separate parts. So opening will be done by a third-year resident. Then main surgeon will come in. They will do the main job. Then senior resident can take up and finishing up job. And then third resident can come and do a closure. So we have divided into parts. And your exposure is only 15-20 minutes. I did a wax few days back. So we divided the exposure time, and we make sure that nobody is getting a long exposure. At the same time, you can wear the level 3 PPE for a short period of time. So that helped us.
Very nice. Very nice point, sir. Dr. Satpal is here. Dr. Satpal, please. And Dr. Sharma. Dr. Satpal, are you connected?
Yeah, I'm connected.
Yeah.
Actually, it's very difficult, I think, to alternate with surgery, like Dr. Mishra said. Is somebody opening, somebody closing. If we are spending only half an hour, the senior agent who is assisting, he's spending all the time over there. So I think that is, if the equal caliber surgeons are there who can just take over the case. We can't send, they will spending full time 3 hours and we spending only half an hour. So as Dr. Jaspal said, the surgeon should be of equal caliber who can do the same surgery which he is doing. I think practically that is not possible. Only prolonged surgeries, the problem is there. Till now, we are not still very clear what should be done with the cancer surgeries, because we are doing only emergency surgery where whether patient is bleeding, perforated, all those things, or instruction. We have to take the call now for oncology surgery also, because we don't know it's going to be locked down for another 2 weeks or 4 weeks.
Dr. Sandeep Sharma ji. Sir, are you connected? Dr. Sandeep Sharma.
Dr. Bishop, I would like to second what
Yeah.
Dr. Satpal said. That when I said it means 2 teams, right? It means 2 teams, not just residents. You have to have a unit, make 2 teams. One team does one part, one distance, and to decrease the exposure time to all of us.
Yeah,
because
it makes
to
sense.
leave a resident to there for 2 hours and yourself for 30 minutes will become a little
different resident. Now, but one team will open, but same thing will continue there for case 2 hours.
Very important. Very.
Dr. Bishop? Dr. Bishop? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
You. Yes, Tinder, please.
Yeah. The one very important problem we are facing is tertiary level is not from our district only, from a very far district. And the definitions of the containment area, they are changing daily on the number of the cases being cropping up everywhere. So the things are going to be very, very difficult in coming, because you are not very sure about your district, but you are not very sure about the other districts from which area the patient is coming, whether that's on that day the patient is or not. So I mean, it becomes the word judicious use of PPE is a very tricky term. It is very difficult to use, and the availability is also very issue. So there are many problems which we are facing. We certainly the guidelines will have to be changed to decrease the exposure to the healthcare professionals in the present